Oda just changed the entire final saga by finally revealing the tragic truth behind Loki's past. What first looked like the story of a violent giant prince slowly became one of the darkest flashbacks in all of Elbaf. And the deeper this story goes, the more disturbing the truth around Harald, the world government, and Emu becomes. Stay until the end, because the final moments of this flashback completely change the way Loki is viewed. In One Piece. Loki. Loki was born into the royal family of Elbaf during a time when the giant kingdom was already beginning to change. Even as a child, people around him feared him because of the legends connected to the royal bloodline. Most giants expected him to become a violent warrior one day, and because of that, Loki spent most of his early life isolated from the people around him. But despite his reputation, Loki's entire world revolved around his father, Harald. Harald was completely different from the traditional rulers of Elbaf. Instead of focusing only on war and giant pride, he wanted to modernize the kingdom and open Elbaf to the outside world. He believed the giants could become something greater than endless warriors fighting old battles forever. To Loki, Harald was more than a king. He was someone he genuinely admired and wanted approval from. Elbaf. As Loki grew older, the kingdom itself slowly started splitting apart. Some giants supported Harald's vision for peace and alliances, while others believed he was betraying ancient giant traditions. The more Harald pushed Elbaf toward change, the more enemies he created inside his own country. Loki witnessed all of this happening around him from a young age, and over time, the tension inside Elbaf became impossible to ignore. The world government. Eventually, Harald began negotiating with the world government. At first, it looked like he was trying to secure a better future for Elbaf, but the deeper he got involved with them, the worse things became. The government never truly cared about peace with the giants. They wanted influence over Elbaf because of the giants' overwhelming strength. And slowly, Harald began falling deeper into their control. Shanks. Years later, Shanks arrives in Elbaf alongside Skapar Gaban after learning about the growing danger surrounding the kingdom. By this point, Shanks already understands how dangerous the Holy Knights and the government truly are. He tries warning Harald before things become irreversible, but Elbaf is already collapsing politically from the inside. This moment also heavily hints that Shanks knows far more about the true history of the world than most characters realize. Harald's decline. After the government's influence spreads through Elbaf, Harald slowly begins changing as a person. His behavior becomes unstable, his decisions become more extreme, and even the giants closest to him begin questioning whether something is wrong with him mentally. Everything truly starts falling apart after Harald receives what the story calls the Second Covenant from Emu. The covenant was presented almost like a divine agreement, something that would supposedly protect Elbaf and strengthen Harald's rule. But in reality, it was closer to a form of control. From that moment onward, Harald slowly begins changing both mentally and emotionally. As time passes, the effects of the Second Covenant become worse. Harald starts losing control of his emotions, his behavior becomes unstable, and his actions grow more violent and unpredictable. Some moments almost make it seem like Harald is fighting against himself internally. It reaches the point where even Jarl realizes Harald may no longer truly be free, and eventually, Harald completely loses control altogether. By the final stages of the flashback, he is no longer acting under his own will anymore. Imu's influence has fully consumed him, turning the once peaceful king of Elbaf into someone almost unrecognizable. Loki starts watching the father he admired slowly fall apart in front of his eyes, and for the first time, he begins realizing that Elbaf itself may be in serious danger. Jarul becomes one of the few people desperately trying to stop Elbaf from destroying itself completely. He understands that Harald is no longer acting like the same man who once dreamed about peace for the giants. Jarl attempts to protect both Harald and the kingdom, but the conflict surrounding the royal family has already gone too far. During the chaos, Jarl is heavily injured, trying to prevent the situation from becoming irreversible. The legendary devil fruit. Near the end of the flashback, Harald reveals the existence of a legendary devil fruit connected to Elbaf's future. By now, Harald no longer speaks like someone trying to preserve peace. Instead, he sounds like a man preparing his son for a future war that cannot be avoided anymore. This moment completely changes Loki's role in the story, because Harald begins treating him less like a child and more like Elbaf's final hope, Ragnir. Inside the royal treasure chamber, Loki encounters the legendary giant weapon known as Ragnir. The scene feels almost ancient and mythical, like Loki is stepping directly into the hidden history of Elbaf itself. When Ragnir attacks him, it becomes clear that the secrets surrounding Elbaf go far beyond giant politics. Something connected to the ancient world, the gods, has been hidden here for centuries. Harald's final moments. Eventually, Harald reaches the point where even he understands that something terrible has happened to him. In one of the darkest moments of the flashback, he orders giant soldiers to kill him. The king who once wanted peace for Elbaf is now completely broken mentally, and the people around him can barely recognize him anymore. Loki watches his father collapse emotionally and mentally right in front of him, powerless to stop it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more, because from this point onward, the story only gets crazier. Loki killing Harald. The moment Loki kills Harald completely changes his life forever. The scene is not written like a normal act of betrayal. Instead, it feels tragic and painfully emotional. Loki is forced to kill the father he genuinely loved, because by that point, Harald is no longer the same person anymore. And the worst part is that Elbaf never learns the full truth. To the kingdom, Loki simply becomes the prince who murdered his own father. Loki's hatred. After Harald's death, Loki carries the burden of that moment for years, while the truth behind Elbaf stays buried. Most giants fear him, blame him, or misunderstand him completely. But deep down, Loki understands that Harald was ultimately destroyed by forces connected to the world government, and possibly Emu himself. That is why in the present timeline, Loki chooses to stand against Emu during the battle for Elbaf. He is no longer fighting for revenge or power alone. He is fighting because he finally understands the truth behind what happened to his father and to his kingdom. The truth about Emu. By the end of the flashback, Oda makes it painfully clear that the tragedy surrounding Harald and Loki was never just a family conflict. The deeper truth points directly toward Emu and the hidden control the world government has held over the world for centuries. Loki's story stops being the story of a monster prince and instead becomes the story of someone shaped by manipulation, loss, and a kingdom destroyed from the shadows. And honestly, this flashback may end up becoming one of the most important setups for the final war in all of One Piece.